Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction to Blindspot Season 5, Episode 4. This episode is entitled, In My Axe, which is a great Lord of the Rings reference. Always a good way to start a discussion of any show by referencing.
This was so good. So good. I loved everything about this episode.
Is this the best episode of the season? I feel like it is.
I think it is for me. Part of it is, of course, I'm missing Reade, and we had Reade flashbacks. We had what I was really hoping for, the Reade hallucination. But yeah, there was a lot of really cool stuff. I loved it.
There's a lot of really good stuff in this episode. I think the performances are good. I think you still have just enough humor that it sort of balances the tone. I still think the Bill Nye episode is the funniest one, but I do think overall this is one of the strongest episodes of the season. And before we get into it, if you do like this video, give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other updates.
So this episode really brought to the forefront to me how missed Reade is on this show. Like, each person in this team really does bring something to the team, and having these sort of flashbacks with him, having him standing on the other side of the door with her, with Tasha, it was just... it really felt like, yeah, the team is back together. And then I sort of went back and started to just think a little bit about the other episodes that we've had this season. And they're good episodes, but he is missing from this team. And it feels like it. There is a hole.
And I think there should be a hole with him gone. I think it is sort of this common trope on a crime show where you get rid of an established character and then, oh, here comes Bob No Name, who's going to be the new fill-in, and we're going to try to shoehorn him in there and try to make it feel like the same. And I think it's good that they're showing that it's not, and that it feels different, and things are a little bit weird, and, you know, Zapata's trying to find other people to communicate with, and it's a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's just, I think with this being the last season, there's only, you know, it's a shorter season. I get that they needed to have, you know, stakes in the game, and that if the place was going to be blown up, yeah, somebody's got to go. But on the other hand, now that's kind of like, okay, we know it's the last season. There's only so many episodes left. I actually would have been okay if nobody had gone, and I know, and I'm taking back what I said in the pilot or in the premiere, where I basically said somebody had to go. I'm not okay with it anymore.
We are in a different stage of the grieving process right now, and I think it's really hard after an episode like this, because I think the flashbacks are really what get me the most with Tasha and Reade, because it is sort of a reminder of, okay, they weren't necessarily on the same page all of the time in the early going, but it's sort of like the superhero origin story. It is the tale of how they started to work together and how they figured it out and how it was them versus the world and them convincing Grumpy Weller to let them go and be a part of this. It was just seeing them as a team in the early going. It just warmed my heart.
Yeah, it really did fill that void in my heart for this episode. And now I know going forward that it's, you know, he's not here anymore. And it was such a good episode, but it was also that reminder that now going forward, it's over. And spoilers, for those that don't want to know the spoilers, plug your ears. But we do have to talk about the fact that Tasha is pregnant. And bringing in who I'm going to assume is Reade's baby.
Yeah.
Isn't enough to fill that void. I love that this is a thing and that he's going to be able to, you know, continue on through his child. But it wasn't enough for me. I'm really missing this character.
I'm really kind of walking a tightrope with this, because I understand why they chose to get rid of Reade, and I understand that it's something that was kind of a driving force for the remainder of the story that they wanted to tell. And I understand that it's a world where tragic things are going to happen. It's not going to change that I still miss the character, that I wish the character was still there, and I want to envision this sort of idea of a happy ending for Tasha where she can have both Reade and a family and they can continue to sort of move forward like that.
Yes, and that's why now I'm back on Delusional Island and that he is the person behind the tattoos being flashed up on the screens in Times Square. I've said it. I feel better for it. This is where I am. Yeah.
Well, if only I want to live in a world where this happens because it's easily the twist that would be the most
to Delusional Island with
well,
me.
There's all these other theories out there as well, and Delusional Island's probably the most fun. I mean, it's probably more interesting than it being Jane's daughter or someone else who is doing it. So I will certainly say that. There's that other part of me that is just sort of like, okay, so, you know, of course, if you're going to kill off a character, you're going to kill off one of the supporting characters involved in this relationship and not one of the leads involved in the relationship, and it does feel a little bit like, okay, you got rid of the you know, one of the people who was more convenient for you two, and that frustrates me a little bit. But I will say that I love the work that Rob Brown did in this episode because it's got to be really hard to like play a character you already know is dead for starters, and then also go back and play an earlier version and also play an imaginary version of him at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that they did sort of that present hallucination she was having at the doorway. I was hoping that it would continue on, maybe through a little bit more of the season so that I could still have him and we could all still have him, but it doesn't make sense now. It feels like he was there to kind of give her the strength that she needed. That moment at the end where, you know, you see the flashback where she saved his life and he's like, I owe you one. I died inside.
Yeah, that was rough.
I died inside.
That
was so rough. I was just like, yeah, no, that was rough.
Yeah.
That was rough.
I mean,
this episode was so good. This episode was so good.
I mean, kudos to the writers for at least having us to feel some of these things in this episode. But yeah, it's a rough moment.
Yeah.
Everything around Reade is still emotional. I did find a little bit of levity in the fact that out of all the people that Zapata ends up giving this pregnancy news to, it is Rich.com, the same person who said DTF to her earlier in the episode.
And doesn't know what that means?
Yeah, Rich.com needs to like visit some online dictionaries here and learn the lingo.
Yeah, or watch some Jersey Shore. We all who have watched that know what that means now. So, you know, just at one episode, Rich, just one episode.
Yeah, it's a good reminder in this episode, too, of how, you know, in sync a lot of the team is, where Patterson can sort of figure out almost immediately that Rich is not his typical Rich self.
Yeah, and then he's going to give, like, the worst lie ever that Zapata came on him. Come on, Tasha ain't coming on to you.
Yeah, the man is a one-line machine, though. Okay, so I liked a lot of the stuff with Rich in this episode, and you know, the thing is that I spent so much time sort of reveling in the past and the Reade flashbacks and all of that sort of stuff that I really actually didn't concentrate probably as much on the present day stuff as I should have because I was just so compelled by everything in the past.
Yeah, I agree. The same thing was happening to me as well. It was, you know, we knew what was going on, that there's this chemical problem coming up that they have to deal with, but it was such a non-story in this story because the performances in the story was so good with everything else.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just the flashbacks were so good or that the present day stuff needed more work. I can't figure it out so soon after watching it, but I mean, the big standout of the present day storyline is, of course, the final few seconds where Jane gets shot, and we'll talk more about this in a preview, I'm sure. It's a compelling end to the episode, but sort of the build-up to it wasn't necessarily there as much.
Yeah, because for the two of them, we saw Jane make a call on Weller's kid, which is, for me, just every time I see something like that happen where it's your partner knows something that they have to know. Like, you can't keep something like that from a parent. I got sort of where she was coming from as a thing where it was like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't tell him, as a fleeting thought. That's what I thought that was going to be. Even Rich saying, oh, we've seen how well this ends. This nothing could possibly go wrong by keeping that Weller's daughter is sick and in the hospital. This is a winning idea. And of course it's not a winning idea. And I didn't get why she actually decided to go through with it. Yes, contemplation, but no with the going through with it.
I don't get this either. This to me is the worst part of the episode, because it just feels like the whole somebody is keeping a secret from the other main character is so tropey, and we've seen it like 100 times already. And
these guys are so past it.
yeah, this is season 5. Jane and Weller, they have went through every horrible thing imaginable that a couple could go through at this point. I think she's got to understand that, you know what? It's all right to go ahead and clue in Weller as to this, and we can get through it and deal with it together because it is his daughter.
Yeah, and I get that he's going to get really excited about going down there and being like, yeah, I got to get down there. I have to deal with this. I need to be there with my daughter. Of course, that's going to be excited. It's not the right word, but, you know, passionate about, I have to do this.
Yeah.
But after taking that minute with Jane and going through it, I mean, he was going to make the decision not to go. But even if he did go, that is not Jane's decision to make. He's a parent. That is only his decision to make, and she shouldn't have kept it. It was weird. I really didn't like this part of the episode.
I'm thinking...
And I just kind of don't feel like she would have done this.
Yeah, it felt almost a little bit too much like the team had a really good idea for the Zapata and Reade storyline in this episode, and so much of it was meant to be kind of anchored around that. And I think they knew where we were going to end up with Jane, which was going to be really exciting and dramatic in its own right, but I don't think they had really figured out what they were going to put in there for Jane and Weller along the way. So they were kind of like, okay, let's throw this in, because I can't see this having a long-term impact on the future of the show that she kept this secret.
No, they were forgiven by the end of the episode. This was one of these situations where it felt like they just didn't need that story at all. And I understand that they're the stars of the show, but you can hand over one episode to this other storyline that really was the heart of this whole episode, and it took over everything anyways.
Yeah.
That you could have had it not be about what's going on with his daughter, but still included the stuff that was going on with her birthday. She didn't need to be sick. Of course, this may come up later on in another episode, but it didn't need to be here. And it definitely didn't need to be, let's keep a secret from my, you know, my man. Like, it's just, no.
You could have just taken those few minutes and maybe given Jane some more action sequences, maybe given a little more backstory. Maybe you give us 3 minutes of Rich.com one-liners. I don't know. I would be happy with that too. So.
Or you could have actually just had them sit down and have the difficult conversation. If you needed and wanted to give them some like really good meaty story, give us that conversation. Have her say, you know, listen, I know that we're already in the thick of everything, and I hate to have to give you something harder on top of it, but here we are, we're in it together, and have that conversation. That would have been such good TV.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we didn't get that, but we did at least get a pretty solid episode the rest of the way with some good performances.
Yep.
And you know, it doesn't feel like we made a huge amount of progress to stopping Madeline in this episode.
Not really.
But it did feel a lot like a love letter to the Blindspot of old, visiting, you know, some characters from early on in the show's run. I'm always glad to see my old boy John Hodgman showing up way back in the flashbacks.
And to see Patterson all like so young and fresh and new. That was cute.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in there, but let's get your take on all of this. What did you think about Blindspot Season 5, Episode 4? Be sure to share in the comments, and if you do like this video, give us a like, subscribe, and you can support us further by checking the link in the description to the store, and we'll see you here next time.